Right, so I'm out for a quick ride with Tim today, and he bought this Ducati Scrambler 800 a couple of months ago. A few weeks back I picked up my Trident as well, and they're actually on the spec sheet surprisingly similar, so I thought I'd make a comparison video today. I'll run you through the specs, talk about some of the points of difference as well, and then I'll give you 3 reasons to buy the Trident, 3 to buy the Scrambler. So obviously the build of the engines is quite different, but the output is really similar. You've got an L-twin here, 800cc air-cooled, whereas the Triumph has an inline triple, 660cc's, water-cooled, but they both put out pretty much the exact same torque figures, so 64 Newton meters on this bike at 6,250 RPM, 66 I think at 5,750 on that bike, so only a couple of Newton meters difference, only 500 RPM difference, and realistically most of us wouldn't feel that on the road. Where they do vary though is that this triple can spin up a bit more, so the peak power is produced at 10,250 RPM, 80 horsepower. The Scrambler doesn't rev up that high, and given that horsepower is basically a product of torque and revs, you get a bit less power, so 73 horsepower at 8,250. Built around those engines, you've got a steel trellis frame on this bike, steel frame on this one as well, and the dimensions and weights are super similar, so 189 kilogram curb weight for both bikes, 805mm seat height on the Trident, just under 800 on the Scrambler. Tim's fitted some Renthal bars on this one. The stock ones are higher, but actually with this setup they're super similar in their bar position as well, and the suspension is almost exactly the same too, so 41mm upside down forks on each, no adjustability, and then a monoshock at the rear with just preload adjustments, so you can set up the sag if you've got a passenger or luggage, although luggage is quite unlikely on these two bikes. It's KYB branded suspension on the Scrambler, Showa forks on this, and they're separate functions, so one fork leg has a spring, one takes care of damping. We're getting into the nitty gritty though. Ultimately they're super similar. In terms of braking, you've got a 4-pot Brembo on the Scrambler on a 330mm disc, so that's pretty big. Simpler brakes on the Trident, 2-pot Nissins and 310mm disc, but there's 2 of them, so that adds a bit of power. And at the rear there's a single pot caliper on both bikes. 3 reasons to buy the Trident then. The first one would be the tech. There's far more in terms of gadgetry on this bike than the Scrambler. You've got 2 riding modes of road and rain, and then this TFT insert at the bottom of the dash has loads of functionality, especially if you pair it with the Bluetooth module accessory. That means you can control your phone, get navigation, all from the switchgear, and see it on the dash there. It's got self-cancelling indicators, LED lighting all round, a far more modern package than the Scrambler, although to be honest I think it suits the character of the 2 bikes better. I think it'd be a bit weird for the Scrambler to have loads of tech on it because it has more of a heritage feel. Tim's bike's a few years old. I think the most recent version does get LED lighting all round, and it has cornering ABS as well with an IMU. No traction control though, no riding modes. It's a simple package, and clearly in terms of tech the Trident's a good stretch ahead. Reason number 2 to buy this bike, if you're doing road riding and you want to push on a bit, it does have more power, the handling's a little tighter, the brakes are a little bit more powerful, so all in for a road focused bike. If you like hitting up the twisties, this is the bike to choose. And then lastly, price. This starts at £7,195, 100 quid extra for the premium version of the paint job with the big Triumph logos. The Scrambler starts at 7,695 I think now with the Icon Dark, so that's got a matte black paint job, some slightly cheaper finishing items like the mirrors and indicators, a few hundred quid more and you can get a yellow, orange or red paint job, but that puts quite a big difference between the 2 bikes, and I think if you've budgeted around 8 grand you could buy the Trident and spec it up with some of those accessories that I was talking about, so the Bluetooth module, a quick shifter as well, which makes quite a difference to the riding experience. 3 reasons to buy the Scrambler then. If you want something that can off-road a little bit, this would be the choice. It's not a particularly capable dirt bike or anything like that, but it does have more suspension travel than the, I mean you would never take the Trident off-road, would you? It has 150mm front and rear. It's got an 18-inch front which should roll over bumpy stuff a bit better, and it comes with those same semi-knobbly-ish Pirellis. And the stock bars, like I say, they're much higher and wider than the Trident. So for light green laning, gravel roads, that kind of thing, it does offer a touch more flexibility in terms of the type of riding you can do with it. Secondly, if you want that heritage retro feel, this certainly brings it with that air-cooled L-twin. There are a couple of retro-inspired design items on the Trident, like the round headlight, the Trident name as well, but really this is the one that feels like it could be a slightly older bike than it truly is. It's not just in the aesthetic design, it really does have a different feel, more shake to it, more rattling to it. It's that air-cooled twin that really gives it much more character, and it's super noticeable when you get out on the road. There's a very smooth feel to the Trident, whereas this just has more of that mechanical feel to it. Third reason to buy the Scrambler, if you're a bit sensitive to kind of firm rides, firm shocks and slightly hard saddles, then this is probably the one to go for. There's a bit more cushiness in the padding here, there's a softer feel to the shock, and with those standard higher bars you're going to be sat up a little bit more as well. So that's not to say that the Trident is uncomfortable or cramped like a naked sports roadster would be. It's perfectly fine for commuting and motorway work and all those kinds of things, but the Scrambler's that little bit softer. So like I say, if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, then definitely check one of these out. So that's a quick overview of these two bikes. I'd love to know your pick down in the comments below, and also let me know any questions you've got and I'll try and get back to you. And if you're new here and you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe and I'll catch you next time.